Olá, 99,7 milhões. É o número de processos que aguardam decisão da justiça brasileira. Alguns se arrastam há anos, até mesmo décadas. Mas como mudar esse cenário? Uma saída seria tentar um acordo entre as partes antes mesmo de uma decisão nos tribunais. É disso que trata a lei da mediação, em vigor desde o fim do ano passado. Uma forma mais rápida e simples de solucionar conflitos. Sobre esse assunto eu converso com John Clifford Wallace, juiz federal da Corte de Apelação dos Estados Unidos. Judge Wallace, first of all, thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome.
Há quanto tempo a mediação é usada no mundo para solucionar conflitos?
Oh, I guess it must have started sometime back with Adam and Eve, as far as I can tell. But as far as within the courts, this is something that came in with the beginning of this generation as a medium that can be used to solve problems and assist the courts.
Tem trazido resultados positivos?
Oh, it has. As a matter of fact, I've assisted in implementing mediation case management in many countries, and we've never failed to succeed in decreasing the backlog of courts. It's a system that's been proved. We use it also in the United States.
Quais são os benefícios da mediação?
Well, every case doesn't have to have a judge to decide it. As a matter of fact, there's some cases that would be much better if the people would get together and decide it for themselves. When people get through the case and they lose, they don't say, I guess I was wrong. They say the judge was bribed or I had a bum lawyer. And we still have this divide between the two parties. Mediation, true mediation, which is win-win mediation, finds a ground upon which we can bring people together. So if you're suing your neighbor, you're not shaking your fist at him, all of a sudden you're waving to them. And so it's a good thing for society as well as benefiting the courts.
É possível sempre conseguir um acordo?
Oh, no. The benefit of it is that it is not necessary for them to mediate. They know they can always go out and get into court. We show them a better way. It's an alternative dispute resolution, but it's also the better way of accomplishing what they really want, which is to settle this matter, get on with their lives. And if you can do it and still have friendships, still have businesses working together, still having neighbors talk to each other, family members still coming to family reunions, it's much better for society.
Existe algum aspecto negativo na mediação?
I can't think of any. Some people say, I just want to go to court and I just want to get that decision. If they feel that way, then they shouldn't be in mediation. Mediation requires cooperation. But most people really don't want to get up on the stand and they really don't want to go through a trial. They say they do. So the negative benefit is you don't get to suffer going through a trial.
Ajuda a mediação a reduzir o número de processos pendentes na justiça?
Oh, does it? Mediation, it takes a little while, and it has to be developed with what we call case management, which is where the trial judge manages the case from the very beginning till the end of the case. But those two together are really quite remarkable. For example, in the United States, we've been doing this now for 60, 70 years, so it takes a little while. But we mediate 9 out of 10 cases, both criminal and civil. So we're trying 1 out of 10 cases filed. If we went from 90% down to 80%, we'd need twice the number of judges and twice the number of courthouses. Literally, our judicial system functions because we do have this case management and mediation. Now, here in Brazil, there's probably about maybe 10% max that are settling. So in the United States, in comparing with the judge in Brazil, you're asking your Brazilian judges to work 9 times harder than the United States judge. So what mediation does, it doesn't have the judge work harder, it has them work smarter. It teaches them a new skill. And countries all over the world are beginning to embrace this. And it's beginning to become the way of going ahead. Just before I left home, I got a call from Mexico, and I've already been down there to explain it. Now they want to do it. We're going to be setting up pilot programs in 6 of the Mexican cities. So it's really moving quite rapidly.
Além dos Estados Unidos, que outras experiências de sucesso a gente tem no mundo?
Oh, the ones that I've been working with is Thailand, where they do a very excellent job with mediation and use retired people for mediation, and they're enjoying it very much. They're hitting about 80% mediation. In Malaysia, in their commercial court, which is the key court if you want your economy to run right, they had a huge backlog. Now the longest that a commercial court lasts in the Malaysian judiciary is 9 months. That's quicker than we do in the United States. So this is just typical of what's happening in these various countries that are embracing it. We're now going to have it started in Botswana, in South Africa. It's beginning in Uganda in another 2 months. Nigeria is close to beginning, and it just continues on. I'll be working in Eastern Europe later this summer with the countries that used to be in the Soviet country, the Central and Eastern countries, those 14 countries. And there's 2 of the countries there that are going to be developing the same program. So it's really spreading worldwide.
Tendo resultados tão bons, por que a mediação já não é usada amplamente nos países?
Good question. There's a divide in the world between civil law countries and common law countries. It's much easier to implement in a common law country because there's more flexibility. In a civil law country, they have a tendency to just maintain what they've always done. We've always done it this way. It's been copied from the Spanish courts. And all through Central and South America, you find the same problem, that there's no method of settling cases in a different way. The result is, because everybody can go to the top, the Supreme Courts are huge, either in their number of cases or in their number of justices. So while the civil law worked very well, and it's a very good system, it doesn't do overload well. And so most countries are now doing a combination of the 2. I'm working in Vietnam now, where the Constitution now says they have to be adversarial, and we're developing a new process that's part continental and part common law, but it'll fit. So what you try to do is get the best from both and fit it into the needs for your judicial structure. What will work best in Brazil? And then just copy good ideas from wherever they are.
A gente tem, além da mediação, a conciliação e a arbitragem. Queria saber as diferenças e semelhanças entre essas 3.
Well, theoretically, of course, they're applied differently in different countries, but theoretically, arbitration just takes the deciding person from the court over to an independent arbitrator. There's no essential difference other than that. Arbitration used to work faster than the courts. That isn't always true now, but it does allow people to go to arbitration, and then they can have an arbitrator in whom they have confidence because they have the ability to make choices. Arbitration, for example, in China when we first started, was used there a lot because they were not terribly trustworthy of their judges that were there. But that has a process. If the arbitration decision is not followed through by the parties, they have to go to court and get an order ordering them to follow the arbitration process. So there's still a step that'll go to the courts. Mediation, as I say, is where people come together, where we talk to them about some ways that they can decide the case without worrying about going to trial. That is, in real mediation, which is win-win mediation, what you do is you look at the history of the people, and you find some other basis upon which they can come to an agreement. Then they don't worry about finding out who's right or wrong. They walk out holding hands. Conciliation's a little different. Officially, conciliation is where you conciliate with one party with another. You ordinarily aren't involved in the mediation where you're working directly with them. Conciliation really allows an in-between to go from one to the other. Conciliation is used very often, for example, in labor matters.
Existe alguma situação em que a mediação não é indicada?
Yes, I think so. If you're dealing with a constitutional issue, you can't mediate that. The Constitution says what the Constitution says. And we have to be very careful that the judicial system doesn't decide how they think the founders made the Constitution and then give rulings in light with that, rather than going to the Constitution itself. And I'm not saying that happens in Brazil, I'm just saying it happens in some countries. So I think that's it. It's very difficult to arbitrate a statute of what it says, or mediate a statute, but you can mediate the results of the statute. So there's some limitations when you get into that area, But aside from that, we found no area where mediation can't be effectively used, not only in the court system, but as you've developed here in Brazil, the community mediation system, where you're not even in the courts. Mm-hmm. And this community mediation program has a tremendous amount of value, especially in Brazil, where you have such a diverse population with different ideas coming from different countries. You don't need court systems if that's effective. Court systems are necessary when the people can't arbitrate or communicate, or they can't mediate in these general systems.
Existe prazo ideal para se fazer a mediação e depois disso ela deixa de ser válida?
Well, of course, sometimes people feel that way, that they should have a certain number of days, but it's like saying that all people are the same, or all disputes are the same. As long as you're making progress, you're getting the people together, and the mediator is working effectively, the mediator will know when time is up. Putting a deadline on something indicates that all cases are the same, and they simply are. It's like telling a judge they have to decide so many cases a day or so many cases a week. Like there are a bunch of machines that we're going through in the process of manufacturing. But every case is different. And similarly, every mediation is different. So I'm a little hesitant to put deadlines on them, but if we trust the mediator and they're well trained, they'll know when the time is up.
Existe alguma qualificação específica para o mediador?
No, not necessarily. Mediation is for a person that has the ability to bring people together, to solve problems. Parents very often are very good mediators. If you're not a good parent, you're not a very good mediator. In the early days in the West, in the United States, we had no trained mediators, didn't even have courts. So you went to a minister, you went to some person who is in business, you went to the banker. You just have trust in those people. And that's why this general mediation outside the courts is going to work well in Brazil, because you have a lot of people that can do that. When you get into the court situation, it's a little different, because these people have been fighting, and they intend to fight. And their lawyers have told them we're going to go to the very end. And so they look at this as sort of a cul-de-sac that they want to get out of. Mm-hmm. So we have to have someone trained to be able to get them to think differently, not about the war, but about their prior friendship and how they can bring that together and settle it. And that's what we call win-win mediation. But it's not rocket science. We can give them to a course for 40 hours, and they can be trained to do this. That's all there is to it. And it's a training in a new skill that's being used. But some of our best mediators haven't even graduated from high school.
Você tem falado na mediação que sempre dá certo. Como seria a outro tipo de mediação?
Well, when we first started, people thought mediation was something where judges would get people together and tell them what to do. Mm. Judges very often are very good mediators because they're trained to tell you. Mediation gets the people to get to another place. And initially, though, when we started mediation, I was practicing law at the time. I was a trial lawyer for 15 years. And mediation was getting before a nasty judge where he would try and force you to settle the case. That is no longer done very often, and it's certainly not productive. People still go away feeling that they have not had real service from the courts when they feel forced to settle. So win-win mediation is the alternative to that, and more in countries all over the world, they're developing this process. We're starting a brand new program in Uganda in 2 months, and in Uganda they're going to develop win-win mediation.
O Brasil tem uma nova lei da mediação. Como é que o senhor avalia essa lei?
I think the mediation law, from what I've heard of it, I haven't read it, from what I've heard of it, is going to be a great windfall to Brazil. And the reason for that is we've always known that mediation should be used. But judges are very conservative people, so are lawyers. They don't like to change the way they do things, and people generally are that way. Mediation, case management requires people to learn new skills. And it's very hard for a judge that's been on the bench for 40 or 50 years to tell them, we're going to do it another way. The younger judges, they adopt this right away. They can see it. The ones in the middle, they usually go along. And some of the other judges reluctantly go along. But we found as soon as they adopt it, then they see the process being important. Because we not only teach them the mediation part, but we teach them the skill of how to get a case ready for trial in the least amount of time to make their trial shorter and more efficient. We teach them how to get their judgment out that very night so they don't have to have all of these cases under submission. So we teach a skill now under this case management, which has been adopted in many countries and is completely successful, and I used it when I was a trial judge, that takes all the headache out of judging and makes it more fun to be a judge. And so once that gets started with the mediation together with the case management, the judiciary is going to be a happier group. We're going to get a better output of cases. There's no reason why it can't happen here. You have an excellent judiciary. They're very fine people. You have great people on the outside. You have interested people that I've met in the legislature. I've met everyone that I've met with so far is excited about this. I have no doubt that it's going to work in Brazil. But remember, we have to take a time when we're moving from the way we've always done it into the way of a new process. But it will work. In 10 years, you'll be saying, you were right, Judge Wallace, it's really working in Brazil.
Aproveitando a sua deixa, a gente tem 100 milhões de processos parados na justiça. A mediação pode ajudar com isso, né?
Of course it could. And it's surprising how well it can work. When we were doing a case in Botswana where we introduced just case management, we divided the cases among all of the high court. Each one had 1,800 cases. That is a huge number of cases for one judge. They implemented case management, and in less than 2 years, 80% of the backlog was gone. It's a powerful tool to get rid of the huge backlog that you now have, and it can be done. Our experience has shown that it can be done with the cooperation of the judges. So I wouldn't worry too much about the big backlog. By doing this, we'll not only over a period of time get rid of that backlog, but we'll have cases coming in that we'll be able to mediate when we need to, but to get them out very promptly. And remember this, that if we only have a few cases going to trial, we have a lot fewer appeals to the intermediate court and a lot fewer to the Supreme Court, and we relieve them of the process. But truth be told, mediation and case management also works in the appellate court. And that's what I did when I was Chief Judge of the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. That's the next story. I'll see you next year for that one.
Good. A última pergunta é, muitos especialistas dizem que a mediação ajuda a trazer segurança jurídica para os casos. É verdade?
Well, I'm not sure as to certainty. The certainty comes when you get an order. But mediation doesn't always have to have an order. Only if the court has to give an order. And it is certain because the order is finished there. And because they have agreed to it, it's rare that they ever appeal it. So it does give that kind of certainty. If you get into the appellate process, you're working for your children because it's going to be a long time before it gets out. But there is a certainty in that sense. The other certainty is when people get together and they've solved their problem and they're now happy neighbors or happy family members, they're working together in industry. They don't turn back. The certainty is the people's changing. The certainty we give when they need an order is a court order.
Você acha que a gente vai precisar do mesmo tempo dos Estados Unidos para a mediação funcionar aqui?
You'll do it quicker than we were. And we were kind of blazing a trail, and we learned a lot as we went along. Now we've taken all the problems out. And so now we can give a model. Now you won't just apply the United States model. It's a principle, and it'll have to be adapted to Brazil. But we have a principle that has a track record, so people have confidence in it. I have no doubt at all that the judiciary will effectively carry out this one, and within a much shorter time than we did, they'll be getting the same results.
Judge Wallace, thank you so much for this interview.
You're welcome. Thank you for asking me in.
Você pode enviar sugestões ou críticas sobre o nosso programa pelo telefone 0800 61 2211 ou pelo site www.senado.leg.br/TV. Na página da TV Senado, você também pode rever este e outros programas. Até o próximo Cidadania.